Hello, welcome to Cardboard History. I'm David. Today I have another episode of the Ken Burns collection. I haven't done one of these in a while because I have had two cards that I purchased on eBay for this collection that have gotten stalled in the mail. One, at this point, I'm giving up on. I'm going to say it's lost. It hasn't updated tracking for about a month. So I'm jumping ahead to a card that did show up, and this was one of the bigger ones that I've purchased recently. It's of a player from the 19th century. This will be now the oldest card in my collection. So I want to share a little bit about the player and then share the card. For anyone who hasn't seen any video from my Ken Burns collection, what I'm trying to do is collect a card for every person that's mentioned in the Ken Burns documentary and the accompanying book. And so that's around 465 different cards that are on my list, and right now I'm at around card 75, still getting going, but starting to make some good progress on the project. So the card for today is of the original home run king, Roger Connor, who was also the original New York Giant. At 6'3", 220 pounds, he was significantly taller and more imposing player than many of his era. At a young age, Connor really took an interest in baseball. He was born in around the 1850s, and his parents lived in a town, Waterbury, Connecticut, that was primarily known for its brass production, and that's where his father worked, was in the mill. And Connor, he really took more of a interest in baseball than working, and at the age of just 14, he moved to New York City to start working some local odd jobs and try to catch on with a semi-pro team there. After being in New York for about 3 years, he had to move back home because his father had passed away, and he entered the workforce to provide for his mother and his 10 siblings. So this was a significant change in the career path, but he still found time to play baseball with a local semi-pro team. And after playing for a little while, he got a tryout with a team for the International Association, which was kind of a higher-ranking minor league system at the time. And his tryout did not go well. He did not make the team. So he went back to playing for the local semi-pro team in Waterbury. And after his tryout, he decided to switch from being a right-handed hitter to a left-handed hitter and saw immediate drastic improvement. So this is something that's kind of amazing to me, is that somebody could just switch which side they're batting from after playing baseball for years and all of a sudden see this marked improvement. So whether or not he was a more natural lefty, he threw left-handed, and maybe he was just trying to bat right-handed for one reason or another, and when he made the switch, it was more natural. But his play just really took off from the plate after he switched to being left-handed. By the middle of the season, he had gotten a spot on the International Association, playing for, what team was it? Holyoke. And did so well that by the next season, he joined the team mid-season, and the following season, he was named team captain. Now, this was a role that didn't really suit Connor, and this is sort of the story of his career. Despite being an outstanding player and producer from the plate, he was not gifted in leadership. He did not take well to the role of being team captain, and he really preferred to have more of a quiet demeanor. So while he is the home run king for many years, he didn't receive the same notoriety as many of his other contemporaries like Buck Ewing and John Montgomery Ward, who had a little bit louder personalities, more leadership style. Connor was more quiet and reserved. So after playing the following year for Holyoke, he made his professional debut with the Troy Trojans of the National League. So he made the move to Troy. While there, he also met his wife, Angeline. In his rookie year, he hit .332, but he had 60 errors playing third base as a left-handed player. Now, his fielding was abysmal, but this was also the era before gloves. So 60 errors without a glove was still below average. It was a sore point in his game, and it's noted in newspaper clippings that talk about him. But nevertheless, it would be something that eventually he would work on, develop, and become one of the better fielders in the game. After that first year playing third base, he moved over to first base and saw a remarkable improvement from playing third base. And that next year, so he broke in with the Troy Trojans in 80, 81, and then in 82, he had another breakout season, and he became the first player to hit a grand slam in the National League, which is another remarkable first. And it wasn't just any grand slam, it was a walk-off grand slam that erased a 3-run lead. So definitely some dramatics at the end of that game. No other player would hit a grand slam walk-off home run to erase a 3-run lead until Babe Ruth did it in 1925. So nearly 50 years, he was the only player to have accomplished that feat in the major leagues. After the 1882 season, the Troy team dissolved, and he was left looking for a new home. And he ended up with many of his teammates moving to the New York Gothams, which was a new upstart team in the National League. And after the Troy Trojans dissolved, that is a mouthful, he, along with his teammates, moved over there to the Gothams. The Gothams were sort of the second tier team in terms of talent to the New York Metropolitans of the American Association that were in New York. However, the owner, who was the owner of both teams, really desired for the Gothams to be the premier team. And so after 2 years struggling, he brought in a lot of significant players to join the Gothams, including the likes of future Hall of Famers Buck Ewing, Tim Keefe, Jim O'Rourke, John Montgomery Ward. In total, in 1885, they had 6 future Hall of Famers on the team. And the team posted a remarkable 85-27 record, which is the best record ever for a team that finished in second place. They finished 2 games back of Cap Anson's Chicago White Sox. And that year was another breakout year for Roger Connor. He led the league with a .371 batting average and also led in hits, total bases, on-base percentage, and he only struck out 8 times in 506 batting appearances. So a fantastic year at the plate for Connor, and his defense had also removed remarkably, and he also developed his signature pop-up slide, which was quite intimidating for opposing players. It was during this 1885 season that the New York team received their moniker, which would become their team logo in the future, the Giants. And Connor had a huge role to play in that because of his imposing stature and the significance in which he contributed to the team that was so successful that year. The following 2 years, the Giants saw a regression in their team. They finished third place the next year and 4th the following year. And then it wasn't until 1888 that the Giants finally won a pennant. But the attention of that year was really largely placed on their team manager, Muttry, and other stars like Buck Ewing and John Montgomery Ward. Connor kind of played the more quiet reserve role. He didn't like the attention, didn't really seek it out, and so he was not as highly revered as some of his teammates. At the end, the following year, they would repeat as pennant winners, and then at the end of that year, many of the players for the Giants would leave to join the Upstart Players League. The Players League had formed as sort of a rebuttal against the reserve clause and the unfair pay that they believed was being paid towards the players. So the players created their own league where they had more control, and this was an attempt to kind of break the National League and create a new system. While many of the best players played in the Players League, at the end of the season it was forced to fold. And many of the players, even during the season, wanted to go back, but Connor was one of the ones that really believed in the rights of the players and continued to hold firm and encourage his fellow players to hold firm as well. However, after the year ended, A.G. Spalding and many of the other strong voices from the National League forced the Players' League to dissolve and brought all the players back. And so Connor rejoined the Giants after that 1-year hiatus. That 1 year in the Players' League was also, remarkably, the only year that he actually led a league in home runs. So his career was more about consistency over a long period of time than having a short period of time where he just absolutely dominated. He was consistent for many years and continued to put up home run numbers. Even though he didn't lead the league, eventually he would come to lead in the career statistic. So after he returned to the Giants, a year or two later, he began to see a reduction in playing time, and so he requested his release, and he left to go join the Philadelphia Athletics of the American Association. A month after he joined the Athletics, the American Association folded, and so he was picked up by the Philadelphia Phillies and had a fantastic season with the Phillies, but at the end of that year refused to sign a contract, which they then traded him back to the Giants. And so after a brief hiatus in Philadelphia, he came back to the Giants and played there for a year, and the following year he was replaced, and again with a reduced playing time, he requested his release, and when he was released, he went to go play for the fledgling St. Louis Browns, who were kind of the cellar dwellers, and he played there for several years as kind of the bright spot on this bottom-dwelling team that really never finished above 11th place. And after years kind of dwelling in mediocrity, he eventually retired from baseball in 1897. At that point, he returned to Connecticut with his wife. During his career, he had had some significant family hardship. He had a daughter in 1888, and during the 89 season, his daughter passed away of dysentery while on a road trip, just days before her first birthday. And Connor always attributed that loss to the fact that it was divine retribution for marrying outside the Catholic Church. And this was a point of pain for him and his wife, and eventually they came to adopt a daughter, Cecilia. And so when they moved back to Connecticut, his wife, and his adopted daughter, Cecilia, they settled down. He took a position working for the local schools as a school inspector, and him and his wife began investing in Florida real estate, which was a booming market at the time. However, that investment really turned south when a hurricane wiped out some of his investments, and they had to move in with their daughter after they sold their home in Connecticut. He eventually he passed away in 1935, I believe, 1931. So, despite all of his accomplishments in baseball, he never attained the same notoriety. And while many of his teammates like Buck Ewing and John Montgomery Ward were quickly elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame after it was established, Connor never received the same recognition. It wasn't until Hank Aaron was challenging Babe Ruth's record that people began to question, well, whose record did Babe Ruth break? And that was none other than Roger Connor. And so with Babe Ruth's record being broken in 1974, 2 years later, Roger Connor was elected into Cooperstown and joined the Baseball Hall of Fame. This was nearly 100 years after he made his professional debut. So a long time coming, but definitely a player who was significant in the early years of baseball in the 19th century. Now, as for his career, he hit 138 home runs, and that was good enough to hold the position of being league leader from 1895 until Ruth broke his record in 1921. So for a solid 25 years, he was the home run king. And a little bit of perspective, in the modern game, 138, Roger Connor currently sits tied for 664th of all time. He was recently passed this past Tuesday by Ian Happ of the Chicago Cubs. So that gives you a little bit of perspective of where that number sits all time. Obviously the home run ever since Babe Ruth grew in significance, and a lot more players hit for power than just to get on base. And so while his number isn't that impressive by today's standard, for living in the era that he did, he really was a remarkable player. The card I want to show is one that I recently picked up. And here's a little bit of the details that I was looking at. This is an 1887 Buchner gold coin. And it was a little bit torn, pun intended, when this card showed up on eBay. It's one that I have been looking for and know it's going to be really hard to find. There's only, between SGC and PSA, there's a graded pop of 35, and SGC does a pretty terrible job of distinguishing. There's two different cards in this set that Roger Connor has. He has one with hands at face level and one with hands at waist level, and several of the cards that are graded in SGC's pop report don't indicate which one. So at most there's 35 of this card that are graded between the two. And when I saw this one pop up, these don't show up very often. When they do, they go for some pretty significant money. So I kind of set what the value was that I would pay for this one, knowing that it's in really rough shape. It is split down the middle. But this is an 1887 gold coin. This set, unlike its contemporary Old Judge, features color lithograph. And on the back here, you can see gold coin chewing tobacco. It was produced by the Buchner Company to promote their tobacco gold coin product. So it has a gold coin in the name, but it has nothing to do with coins. And down here, there's several variations of which lithographic company. Not sure. Let me just try to see if this will work. Yeah, you can't really tell. But down there, it shows that this one is the Giles Lithograph and Liberty Printing Company that produced this card. So there's several different back variations based on that. But this is Roger Connor, the original Giant. I'm hoping to take this card to the National and see if I can talk to PSA or SGC and just see if they will slab it as authentic. I don't know. The only thing I've heard of card that's torn like this is Dave Blue Jacket 66 getting his Joe Jackson Cracker Jack card professionally restored. I'm guessing the cost to get that done would be more than what it's worth to spend on this card. I'm just happy to have it in this condition. If I could get it restored just to restore it as a piece of history and not necessarily to increase its value, I would like that. But most of all, I just kind of want it slabbed to protect it so it doesn't get further damaged. But right now, this is where I've got it. So this is Roger Connor. This is now the oldest card in my collection from 1887, and really an interesting piece of American history, produced at the peak of the Giants' success heading into the 88 pennant winning season. So hopefully you enjoyed this story and a little bit of history about the original home run king, a player who not many talk about anymore, and who was largely left unknown because he didn't seek out the notoriety. There he is. Thank you for watching Cardboard History.